Dawn with your hosts, Jimmy Thompson and Donato Bucci. They're covering the most current issues in sports from the 305 to the 412 and all the way to the West Coast. You can follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at JT and the Dawn or email them at jtandthedon@gmail.com. Now take it away, guys.
Give them a shot to do what?
Welcome to the next episode of JT and the Don, presented by Give Us a Shot Network. I am the Don, Donato Bucci, and remember to subscribe to us, JT and the Don, all sports podcast, wherever you find all of your other favorite podcasts. And remember to leave us a 5-star review. And remember to also subscribe to the Give Us a Shot Network YouTube channel. You know, football season is right around the corner when we have our annual fantasy football show. But before we bring in our expert, let me welcome in everyone's favorite JT, Jimmy Thompson. How you feeling today?
Hey, man, they're not here to see me, man. They're here to see the legend, the expert. I'm here to get information, to steal money from you. But, yeah, this is always one of the best shows. But this is like one of our favorite shows to do. So I'm excited to get started.
It definitely is. So let's welcome in senior sports writer at thegameday.com and JT and the Don fantasy expert in all fantasy sports, Frank Ammirante. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm ecstatic. This is my favorite show to come on in the year. I love talking with you guys. It's not the start of the season for me in the NFL until we do this one. I look forward to it. Thanks for the high praise, by the way. And can't wait to talk some fantasy football. It's the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again for coming on, taking your time. We know you're a busy guy. We see, all of your tweets or whatever they call it nowadays. So we know you are busy with a little bit of everything. So we appreciate
you making yourself sound so old. Like, come on, man. Whatever the kids are calling them these days.
whatever they're calling it these days. I don't know. Do you know what they're calling it? Do you?
Tweets.
All right.
I still call it tweets.
All right. There
I guess I could call it posts.
Okay. All right. See how nice Frank is about it. A lovely.
Look. I don't have to be nice. I got to deal with you every day. You don't.
I'm always nice to you. I don't know. So let's not argue in front of our experts. So we're just going to run through these questions. All right, Frank, and you give us a player and a quick explanation, and we'll do the same on some of these too, based on the question. So for the first question, give us the best player and a breakout player at each of the positions that we'll list here. So by breakout player, we mean for the listeners, we mean a player that can jump into the top 10 at their position in 2024 that was not in the top 10 in 2023. So let's start with the most important position in all of sports, or at least that's what I feel, quarterback, Frank. Who do you have as your best player and then the breakout player?
All right, best player, Jalen Hurts. Big upgrade at offensive coordinator with Kellen Moore in the sense that Moore likes to run fast-paced offenses. And we saw with the Eagles last year, even though Hurts was running wild, especially with the tush push, their offensive coordinator wasn't that great, Brian Johnson. Their offense wasn't the same as it was with Shane Steichen. Now I think they'll get back on track, more passing. Obviously the weapons are there. Now you add in Saquon Barkley. I still think the Eagles will use the tush push. I just think it'll be an overall more efficient offense where Hurts can air it out. And, really for me, for QB1, it comes down to Hurts versus Josh Allen. And what puts Hurts ahead is, Hurts has got A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Allen just lost Stephon Diggs. Sometimes it's that simple. Like the Bills' weapons are not nearly as good as the Eagles. So that puts Hurts ahead of Allen for me in my QB1. As for the breakout, I picked someone who he didn't play last year because he's a rookie, but he's ranked outside the top 10. But I could easily see this player finish in the top 10, and that's Caleb Williams. And just because you look at the Bears supporting cast, the receiving core is fantastic with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. Caleb Williams was thought of as a really highly touted prospect, coming into such a great situation. Plus, Caleb Williams runs a little bit. It's not like he's going to be a zero on the ground. He can run for 300 yards for you. And with that supporting cast and with those passing skills, I can easily see Caleb Williams finishing as a top 10 fantasy quarterback in points per game.
Wow. Listen, he starts to show off hot, JT. Comes in with Jalen Hurts, follows up with a rookie to go top 10. So
he's naming all the guys that we have no chance to get, man.
I know we don't have any chance in Dynasty, neither in redraft, because we got a keeper league and we don't have those guys. So, Frank, that was great to start off the show. Fireworks right off the bat, I think, with Jalen Hurts. But he's got me sold on Jalen Hurts, number one. But, JT, what do you say?
This is such a tough question because realistically, there's like 8 guys that could be QB1. They all have a legit argument as to finishing the top quarterback. I'm gonna just go with a guy that's done it before, and I kind of see it coming, and I'm gonna shoot my shot. It's Lamar Jackson. Like, we think about what we've seen him do in the past and what he did last year. They're giving him more weapons, best passing metrics of his career. He stayed healthy. It's year 2 in this pass-heavy offense, and now they got Derrick Henry to take the rushing load off of him too, which makes him more dangerous in my opinion because he's going to be fresh more often, and that's more explosive runs and more explosive plays for him. So I think my pick is Lamar Jackson to finish as QB1 overall. But I mean, Jalen Hurts, he probably got a good shot to finish over that too. The breakout, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go with a guy that's technically already shown us he could be a top 10 quarterback or the QB1 already. That's Anthony Richardson. The only question with him is health. I think he played 3 or 4 games, he was like top 5 in points per game at the quarterback position last year. He just got to stay healthy. And if he does, I mean, we might be looking at prime Cam Newton putting up crazy rushing numbers and these big passing totals. So I would say Anthony Richardson is my guy that can be the breakout that can jump into the top 10.
So I like both of those picks for best player, but I'm going to go with history predicting the future. And it's Josh Allen. I mean, you look at what he's done the last 4 years, 3 of those years as number 1, 2 years ago as number 2. And let's face it, it's not like this guy had a ton of talent. It wasn't like he was throwing to Saquon or Marshall Faulk out of the backfield. It wasn't like he had a great tight end up until last year, who hopefully Kincaid makes the next big step. It wasn't like he had a great slot receiver or number 2. He only really had Diggs. And let's be honest, last year, Stephon Diggs, there's a reason why Buffalo traded him. They felt his value was not worth the price tag and that he couldn't do what he normally does. So, yes, I understand he doesn't have the weapons of a Jalen Hurts. And maybe for once, Lamar kind of has better weapons than Josh Allen for once. But even with all of that, I'd still go Josh Allen as best quarterback in terms of fantasy number 1, because he's going to have to do it all. He's going to have to run. He's going to have to QB sneak at the goal line. He's going to dump it down to probably Kincaid as a safety blanket and take his shots when he can. And we know he can throw. And then breakout player, I feel like this guy has done it before. So maybe this is a little bit of cheating, but because he's previously been top 10, but not the last couple years, I think it's Kyler Murray. I think he gets a second year in this system. He played only 8 games last year, 11 the year before. So that's why he fell out of the top 10, but you can't forget about him. Like, you cannot forget about him because he was a top 10 quarterback in other years, I think 3 or 4 years ago. So Kyler Murray makes his way back. So it's more of a comeback than a breakout, but I think people forget about him. And so he'll have that breakout again this year.
I like those picks. Mike Regina says, could you imagine having Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the 2 QB league?
Be more specific. What if it's in a dynasty league, Frank? Do you think that's a good thing in a dynasty league?
Dominance. You're just dominating that league. Loving, we didn't even mention Mahomes. You got to love Mahomes this year with a vastly improved receiving core with Marquise Brown, now Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice. Doesn't look like he's really going to get suspended. It's stacked now. I think Mahomes is going to go back to, like, last year was just a down year for him. So speaking of Mahomes, like, that's another legit candidate to get back to, elite fantasy production.
It's funny because you look at the NFL top 100 players, and he was number 4. And there's 3 of us on this panel right now talking about who's going to be the number 1 QB in fantasy. None of us named Mahomes. Like, I mean, you talk about a guy that we just start taking for granted, kind of like Steph Curry in basketball, and you almost forget the greatness of Patrick Mahomes because he makes everything look so easy. But real quick, Mike Regina, thank you, because Frank, yours truly, the Don, was able to get both Josh Allen and Mahomes in our Dynasty League that is commissioned by yours truly, JT. So
some people would call that robbery. So we're not.
It was not.
I don't want to give you any more praise.
Frank, real quick, Frank.
There's no way
is
we're
it
not
a
going to
pretty
talk about
fair
this.
deal? It's a fantasy show. Is it a pretty fair deal in Dynasty? You trade Mahomes, and in return, you get 3 first-round picks all in that draft, 2024 rookie draft in a 12-team league.
Was it like the top of the draft?
It was 4, 8, and 11. So spread out.
The thing is, I will say I do like it for you still, just because it's 2 QB, and like obviously Mahomes is probably the safest. You got to think he's like one of literally the safest, picks in Dynasty. Like you got to think he's gonna have a long career of being right at the top 5. So I do think you win the trade. It just maybe not a total, lopsided deal. Like the person could have got like Drake May, and then maybe
he ended up getting Jaden Daniels, and then Drake May, and then Brian Thomas.
Yeah, so it's not bad. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, see, that's all I wanted to hear. It was a very
Frank,
fair
congratulations!
Deal.
You're gonna help.
It helped
me
get 3 first rounders.
Don't worry about it, Frank. Don't worry about it.
You tanked a year or something?
No. I made trades.
He's a career criminal. Let's just say that. That's why he has all those.
You always have one of those in your league that just find a way to get these nice deals or just stack picks. He's one of those, huh?
Yeah, he's one of those.
I learned from JT. Let's put it that way. I learned from JT because I made trades with him to get a lot of his picks, and he stole Kincaid and Rashee Rice from me. So.
You know what? I'm not doing this with you. I got to do this with you every day. So perfect transition. Let's go to the running back position, Frank. So RB1, and then who's your breakout player at that position?
Well, I kept it simple, RB1. Even with today's news of the calf injury, just Christian McCaffrey, RB1. You got a generational producer at running back playing in the perfect situation with the 49ers. And now, if the Niners end up trading Ayuk, it just seems to be that way. That just opens up more usage. I'm not too worried about McCaffrey's injury. It just seems minor, and they're just why would they even risk playing McCaffrey in the preseason if that's the case? So I think he'll be fine for week 1, and it's just keeping it simple as McCaffrey RB1. Although I do love Bijan and Breece Hall this year, I just decided not to rank them ahead of McCaffrey, but I do if I'm able to pick my selection, I would rather get pick 3, 4, or 5 and hope Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson's there, just because I think they can easily finish as RB1. As for my breakout, this one's tougher because a lot of the running backs ranked outside of top 12, they're harder to pick as the top 10. But if I'm going to pick one, let's go with Kenneth Walker. He's getting a lot of talk in camp that, the new coaching staff really loves him. So, of course, it being a new coaching staff, they can easily, not have the same intentions as the previous one where they'd maybe mix in Charbonnet. Maybe this new coaching staff really loves Walker and wants to feed him. And they've been quoted. I saw a quote we need to feed this guy. And with Ryan Grubb coming from Washington as new offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, I think that could help their offense in general. More scoring opportunities for Kenneth Walker. He's an explosive runner, could take it to the house on any play. So that's going to be my pick for RB breakout this season. Hopefully he stays healthy.
I'm going to go with the best and the best running back being number 1, Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's still only 27. He's a house. I think he has a much better offensive line now. And answer this, Frank, because I really don't know the answer. Who's going to be the goal line back in Philly? I mean, does Kenneth Gainwell do it? Do they bring Will Shipley, a rookie, and trust him at the goal line?
Jalen Hurts is going to be the goal line.
That's my concern.
And I understand that, but I think they also, no pun intended, they pushed back a little bit. They dialed back a little bit on that tush push. And listen, when the ball's at the 3-4 yard line, they're not running Hurts. They're not tush pushing from the 3 or 4 anymore when you've got Saquon Barkley. So I think that is why, yes, there's a lot of mouths to feed there. There's a a lot of talent, a lot of really good players, but I'm still thinking, listen, this guy is still a number one back. Yes, if you're talking 5 years down the road or you're talking about contract-wise, but this is a different question. We're talking about just this year. I think he's finally going to be healthy with a much better team, a much better offense. I think he ends up being the number one guy. And listen, the defenses are weak, in my opinion, or not as good as the rest of the NFL. Washington, and I would even say the Giants, that he gets to play them 4 times. So, and then breakout, I'm going to go with my guy in Buffalo, James Cook. I mean, I think he only took like 54% of the snaps last year, yet he ended up number 12 of running back. So he showed what he could do. He's going to get more than 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's got to. If Buffalo wants to win, they need to be able to get him more than 2 rushing touchdowns. He's going to be the feature back. And listen, with no Stephon Diggs, you never know how this offense is going to go. It might be heavy targets to Kincaid. It might be James Cook all day on the ground and in the air. You never know how it's going to go. So I'd put my money on James Cook breaking out, cracking that top 10.
Okay. I mean, Frank, I get it. It's McCaffrey until it's not, right? But I always say this. If I had the number 1 overall pick, I just can't see myself selecting him. Because anytime I know I do that, that's the time I'm going to get burned. Maybe it's just me with bad luck, but I'm going to go with the guy that has already been there, but just hasn't got the number 1 title yet. And that's Breece Hall. Like, he was RB2 last year with Zach Wilson. Like, imagine what he's going to do with Aaron Rodgers being back. So I would feel more comfortable selecting him, even though I really want to see Bijan Robinson be the RB1, but I don't got the guts to take him that high in the draft. But I'm going with Breece as the RB1. And then the breakout, it was tough, man, because I was really decided between 2 guys. And it came down to the person that I think has a legitimate pathway to do it. And it's Isaiah Pacheco. You know, he's the workhorse back in a Mahomes, Andy Reid offense. That means he's going to get 10 to 12 touchdowns in his sleep if he stays healthy. So I like it. And I think they probably will get him involved, you know, in the passing game a little bit more this year as well. So I think Pacheco is one of those guys that's out there that, you know, he's kind of boring. We don't think of him as a guy that can really, you know, help us win the fantasy championship. But I think he's got a big opportunity this year. And I think he's going to really turn a lot of heads.
Hey, Frank, let me ask you, since it's a fantasy show, and go off script here a little bit, because when I have these conversations with JT, he just always thinks I'm wrong. When he mentions, a guy like Breece Hall, in that he did this with Zach Wilson, and it's unbelievable he was this good with Zach Wilson. Does sometimes when you get a much better quarterback, I mean a huge improvement, and on top of that, a Hall of Fame quarterback with now even more passing weapons as they've added some other guys, could he maybe regress, not skill-wise and not how we view him, but fantasy-wise? Because now, yes, maybe they can't stack the box, but they're going to throw it more. They're going to take more shots downfield, which if it's completed, instead of an 80-yard drive that is a combination of both run and pass, a 40-yard pass now leaves only 40 yards remaining, and it's not all going to be rushing yards. So could there be concern that, yes, Breece Hall's phenomenal, love to have him on the Steelers, but fantasy-wise, does Rodgers coming back hurt his value?
So I see what you're saying, and the key there is the targeting downfield more, because you look at Breece Hall last season, he had 95 targets, and a lot of that is inflated because the offense was completely broken. Like you said, Zach Wilson, all he's doing, like checking it down to Breece Hall. You know, Breece Hall had a 16-target game. So that won't happen really with Aaron Rodgers because, like you said, he's going to throw it downfield more. But I think we could say like a downgrade in targets, like instead of 95, maybe he gets, 70. But I think that's offset by the offense improving, more touchdown opportunities for Breece Hall. You know, he only had 5 touchdowns last season. So you got to think that will increase. And also, on another note, being another year removed from coming back from the torn ACL, you got to think Breece Hall will have more of his burst back. So you could see him be more efficient on the ground. Like, let's remember, 2022, 5.8 yards per carry. Last year was down to 4.5. With better quarterback play and with his burst back, maybe he gets back to that 5 yards per carry range. But to your point, definitely would see maybe a slight downgrade in the passing production. But like I said, I think it's offset by the improvements in offense. And I still am totally on board with Breece Hall finishing as RB1. I rank him 3rd overall. So I love the 3 running backs this year: McCaffrey, Bijan, and Breece, my favorites.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I got to push back though, Don. To your point, I get the concern.
Frank did it for you. Leave it.
But I want to add to that.
Chime in. Okay.
Because you're taking shots at me, and I got to defend myself.
Add no value here. But go ahead.
On top of what Frank said, also keep in mind Aaron Rodgers is coming off of a serious injury, so you act like he's going to be out there doing the things he did in Green Bay, running around, throwing off of 1 foot. Like he's probably going to be looking to get the ball out fast. It's either going to be Garrett Wilson. True. If he ain't open, we go into Breece. So it might be the same or more.
And I understand that
as far as the volume is going to him.
And I understand that, but let's not be fooled. Aaron Rodgers is going to do what he wants. He thinks he can still do what he could do at 28. Now that he's 38, 39.
Father Time has the final say. So
we understand
he might want to do what he wants to
Those
do.
Guys don't
if that Achilles isn't feeling right, it might not happen.
True. Those great athletes like that don't think that way. All right. So Frank, next position, wide receiver.
So wide receiver, again, this is not a bold pick. CeeDee Lamb as a wide receiver 1. The Cowboys continue to play at a pass-heavy and fast pace. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb showed he's just a superstar alpha receiver, just earns targets at a crazy rate. Lamb, you look at his game log, he just got better as last season went along. He just really exploded. Not like I said, not a lot of target competition. There's Jake Ferguson, Brandon Cooks is on the decline. Jalen Tolbert. You look at their backfield, Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott. Like, this is going to be a pass-heavy team. They need to feed CeeDee Lamb. So we're keeping it simple here. We're leaving him as wide receiver 1. As for the breakout, this player is considered a good receiver. So in that sense, you may say he's already broken out. But from a fantasy football standpoint, I think he's going to have a career year, and he could absolutely finish in the top 10 if it breaks right. That's Devontae Smith. Kellen Moore puts his top receivers in the slot more, like he did it with Keenan Allen, and it had huge rewards for Keenan Allen's production. And reports are Devonta Smith could see more time in the slot, so that can help him out. And I think we're going to see him set a career high in receiving yards. Like, his career high is 1196. I think we'll go over that. I think with Kellen Moore, like I said, calling plays, faster pace, more passing, a little more than previous years, and then if A.J. Brown were to miss any time, or Dallas Goedert, and Goddard, let's face it, he's missed time, obviously that's more upside for Devonta Smith. So I think this is just a really good player that we haven't seen his best football yet. And now in a scheme that could really put him in a better position to produce at a higher level, I think Devonta Smith has a career year.
Hey, Frank, don't put that on A.J. Brown. I got A.J.
Brown. Put it on A.J. Brown.
Don't put that on A.J. Brown.
About him. If I got to hear about A.J. Brown and his value one more day. So are you predicting that A.J. Brown is going to play the Mike Williams role and be more of, downfield?
No. I still like A.J. Brown more. I just think that also Kellen Moore uses more motion in his offense, a lot more than their previous offensive coordinator. So it'll help A.J. Brown too, but it's going to help both of them. Because when you're in motion, it's easier for you to get open and you get those layup targets. I think we'll see that more for Smith, and I think he can have a career year. But it's not to say that I don't like Brown. I think I still like him a lot. It's just I could see, Smith having a better year than usual while Brown continues to do Brown things and, meet his value, his ADP.
Okay. I mean, I think the answer
I liked how you recovered with A.J. Brown. You had me worried for a second.
No, I still like him.
JT.
I think the answer is CeeDee Lamb, just for everything you said, but I'm going to go a different route. I mean, I think he is the guy, but I'm going to be risky here and go, let's say Garrett Wilson, man. Everybody's been telling me this guy's a superstar receiver, and, he's had bad quarterback plays since he's come into the league, but the underlying stat that's there is he's top 3 in targets over the last 2 years among all wide receivers. And now he gets Aaron Rodgers back. Don thinks he's the Aaron Rodgers of old, so we're going to go with that. And I'm just thinking of this. The last time Aaron Rodgers had a receiver this talented, I'm thinking think about what 2020 Devontae Adams put up in that COVID year. Like, it was insane numbers. Like, he won people fantasy championships. Like, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and Garrett Wilson is as good as we think he is, like, that's the kind of season that we could see for him. So I'm picking him as the wide receiver 1 just because everything's finally going to come together, the volume, the talent, the quarterback play. And for the breakout, that's tough because there's so many guys you could put in this category. But I'm going to take a page out of Don's book. I'm only going to speak about my guys and speak their success into existence. And I'm going to go with a guy who had a mini breakout last year, and he's starting to give me Amon-Ra St. Brown vibes, and that's Rashee Rice. If he don't get suspended, this is clearly Mahomes' number 1 target, not Travis Kelce, but as a receiver. And we see when Mahomes trusts you, he's going to go to you every play no matter what. So if you're telling me Rashee Rice not going to miss no games, it's year 2 of him with Mahomes and Andy Reid, I definitely think there's an opportunity for him to jump into the top 10.
I'm going to agree with Frank, the expert. It's CeeDee Lamb. It has to be. Like, he's trying to get a new contract, or I should say an extension. So he did that on a non-contract year, and now they're still discussing extensions. Dallas Cowboys say they're not going to talk about it now. I don't know if that just means in the media, but you know he's going to come out hot. He's going to come out firing. He wants that extension. And on top of that, Dak is on a contract year. So you know Dak wants to show out too. And if he's smart, which he is, he's going to feed CeeDee Lamb to make himself, meaning Dak, look good to get that big contract. Because I think the Cowboys are basically saying, well, you're not going to do that well, and you're not going to get the Tua contract. You're not going to get the Trevor contract. And if you do, it's only going to be right around there. You're not going to explode and get $60 million a year. So they're gambling on it, and Dak is like, oh, let me show you. Whoever the OC is, I'm not running the ball. I'm not throwing it to the tight end. I'm going to CeeDee Lamb every time. And again, I don't believe the defenses are that great in the NFC East that they can continually stop CeeDee Lamb on a regular basis. And I think the breakout guy is Michael Pittman. And I know we've probably said this before, and I've gone with him before, but he was 13th last year, 109 catches, over 1,100 receiving yards, and only 4 touchdowns. But with who at quarterback, Frank? Like, who did they have out there? They had 3 different guys. Now he gets Richardson back. So, JT, if you believe Richardson's going to be the breakout guy, that means someone got to go with him. And it's,
him. But doesn't that worry you though? Because he did all that last year with no Richardson, and basically Jonathan Taylor wasn't there for a majority of the year. So it's Gardner Minshew with nobody else to go to. But it was like a funnel to Michael.
Yeah. How is it any different? Because
it's a big difference. I'll tell you how. One, we don't know how much of a good passer Anthony Richardson is. Like, how many wide receivers can he support? We're talking about him as a breakout quarterback. Let's be real. It's the rushing numbers. Like, we're expecting him to run at a crazy rate. He's going to be getting in the end zone at the goal line. And then the second best player in that team is Jonathan Taylor, who's also running back. So I just don't see where the usage for Michael Pittman is going to come from. I think last year was his best case scenario, but it was with that scenario with Gardner Minshew with those 2 other guys missing. Like, are you that confident that he's going to be a top 10 receiver with the new quarterback like Richardson?
JT, you act like the real JT, meaning Jonathan Taylor, is going to get 50 carries a game. That's not the way it is. Steichen never did that in Philly. Like, he is going to feed his guy. He's a smart OC. He's going to feed his guy. In the same argument you just made for Garrett Wilson, because the Jets have Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers ain't running the ball.
But you said he's going to dump it down because of his Achilles. That's why Breece Hall is going to be great. But yet you just picked Garrett Wilson to be the number 1 guy. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Hey, look, he can still get short targets. You got like Devontae Adams was just catching go routes when he was with the Packers. Nah, he was catching the ball all over the field. I'm not saying Michael Pittman is not a good receiver. I'm saying
you gave a lot of pushback here. Let me give my counter.
Is I think best case scenario, and it's more because of Gardner Minshew than you want to.
But how in the world could you say that? But that's false, because if
who else did they have on the team last year?
I like Gardner. Who else do they have this year?
They got Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, who also runs the ball.
Okay, but again, are they going to run the ball 40 times?
They might.
If they do, they're going to lose because you're going to lose Richardson again to an injury. You just said he's going to be the breakout guy for QB. All because of running? That's false. You know it's because of his arm.
So quarterbacks that run at a high rate and score a lot of rushing touchdowns don't
let it go.
Don't perform well in fantasy? Or are we just forgetting the rules now?
No, but that's usually because they don't have a legit elite receiver. Go look at Cam's days, right? Like, go look at Lamar.
I got to chime in a little bit. The one thing that my concern, you know, it's what was Anthony Richardson's, you know, negative coming out as a prospect. He's raw as a passer. And, you know, I know he showed flashes last year and he was exciting, but we still have those same concerns. He hasn't addressed them yet. And I know Minshew is whatever. He's just a backup, but, you know, he could keep the offense on schedule. What if Richardson, you know, struggles a bit as a passer, and that could lead to, you know, a slight downgrade to Pittman? Not to say Pittman will be a bust. I just think maybe there's a risk he can, you know, have a down year compared to last. But if Richardson, you know, exceeds expectations as a passer and this Colts offense is just humming with Shane Steichen, like you said, he's a great play caller. Pittman has proven himself as, you know, a guy that can really earn targets at a high rate. And so there's a scenario where I could see what you're saying, that Pittman builds off last year. But if I have to make a pick, I say there's a slight downgrade with Pittman. Like, hey, Josh Downs is pretty good year 2. They drafted A.D. Mitchell. What if he shows something? There's some more target competition. But I know Pittman will still obviously lead the team in targets. Just a slight concern with Richardson there.
So my thing though is, Frank,
you forgot to mention his favorite player that's also fighting for targets, Jelani Woods. Don swears he's the next Gronk for the last 3 years. So you got all that target competition, and this guy's going to jettison into the top 10.
So if you get back to being serious, because JT always thinks
I
he's
am
right.
being serious. He's tied in.
If you get back to being real, look at the last 3 years. The guy barely misses a game, and you look at the last 3 years: 17th in PPR, 20 and then 13 last year. Name the 3 quarterbacks those 3 years. I mean, you're acting like Anthony Richardson is a bum compared to the 3 guys he's had in the last 3 years. Richardson's not that far off.
I think you're acting like Gardner Minshew's not a good quarterback. He basically put up the same stats as Trevor Lawrence. So they had Trevor Lawrence throwing Michael Pittman the ball last year.
He is good, right? You keep taking shots at my fantasy teams, and
that's what the stats say. Go put their stats side by side and tell me what you see.
And the stats say that Pittman's going to take the leap. He is going to take the leap. Second year in this offense, and he's going to take that leap.
Look, man, I never thought we'd spend this much time on Michael Pittman, but there you have it. Michael Pittman, breakout wide receiver.
No, I'm right, and you don't want to give me credit.
Nah, we just ain't got the heart to tell you to stop doing this. But let's go to the most unique position, tight end. So I'm really excited to see where you guys land on these. So Frank, tight end 1, and then breakout.
All right, let's start with tight end 1. Let's go with a little bit more bold slightly. We'll go with Trey McBride. Second half of the season, he completely balled out. I know they added Marvin Harrison, but while that will take away some targets, it will also open up room, and it will make the offense better overall. So more touchdown opportunities. And McBride is still a top 2 target in this offense, just like, say, Sam Laporta is with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Similar thing. So it's not really a big deal that Harrison's there. It will help McBride have touchdown opportunities. Add in the fact the Cardinals' defense is awful. They're going to have to really play in these shootouts. You look at that defense, like, pretty no-name group, you know, all respect to them. But, yeah, you know, not a good defense. They're going to have to play in shootouts. Trey McBride really thrived when he had a full-time role last season. I think he builds on it. And that's my pick for tight end 1. Even though I rank Laporta higher, I wanted to go bold with this pick. I have McBride at 2. I have them both ahead of Kelsey, in fact, in my rankings. You can find it at thegameday.com. But, yeah, summing it up, McBride, good offense, bad defense. Harrison helps out the offense. I needed to go bold with tight end breakout because top 10 tight end, you know, like there's a lot of tight ends there, and it wouldn't be that bold to say like Brock Bowers or someone like that. So let's go with Luke Musgrave of the Packers. You know, coming out of college, Musgrave was a, you know, touted prospect. He was considered in that draft probably behind Kincaid, Mayer, and Laporta as a prospect. So he's no slouch, and that was considered one of the best tight end classes in recent memory in the draft. And, Musgrave dealt with some injuries, but he made some big plays. Tucker Kraft, his fellow year 2 tight end, is dealing with an injury. Jordan Love looked like an MVP candidate in the second half. That Packers offense could be fantastic. I know there's a lot of targets in that offense, but this is really just a case of betting on a talented player in a good situation with a good quarterback and a high scoring offense. So we'll take a bold pick with Luke Musgrave there. Now, it's not to say in your conventional league, you got like 5-6 bench spots, you start one tight end. You're not going to really draft Luke Musgrave in that kind of setup. But if your league is deeper and, maybe playing one of those tight end premium, it's 1.5 points per reception. Maybe you're in best ball. Musgrave is a good late round pick. And if you're in your, traditional format, just keep an eye out early in the year on the waiver wire, see how he's doing. But he's got upside this year.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with the obvious one. I think it's Travis Kelce because he had his lowest numbers in fantasy since 2015. In addition to that, missed 2 games, and I think that led to some of the numbers being lower. But the guy really doesn't miss many games, even though he is getting older. And I think this offense, you guys touched upon it earlier, I think they're going to be even better. And I think his goal line production will get back to maybe not at his peak level, but I think it's going to be better than what it was last year. I do think Rashee Rice took some of those touchdowns away. I don't know if he gets as many touchdowns this time, but I think Travis Kelce makes up for that because I think there'll be a little bit more of a quick strike offense. So he's going to have more opportunities. And then I'll leave the obvious breakout one for JT. So I'm going to go with my guy in Pittsburgh, Pat Freiermuth. Couple reasons. Pittsburgh loves their tight ends. I think he is a star tight end kind of waiting. He's just been in the wrong offense. And I think whether it's Russell Wilson, where we've seen him maybe go back to the tight end more, play action pass more with Arthur Smith, and whether it's Justin Fields, who we saw what he can do with Cole Kmet, I think either one of those guys, along with how Arthur Smith's going to build this offense, I think Pat Freiermuth, he may not have these gaudy numbers, but he's going to get targets and he's going to get red zone looks. And I think that'll be the difference that really gives him that breakout year. Again, not as athletic as some of these other guys, but still athletic enough that he should fit this Steeler offense really well.
Yeah, you actually stole one of my breakouts in Freiermuth. I agree with you. For all the the crap that we give Arthur Smith for being a shitty coach, man, like the one thing he will do is he'll give the tight ends usage. So it's either going to be Freiermuth or who's that guy's the backup, the huge
Washington.
6'7" guy. Washington. One of them is going to be
Frank,
the breakout.
Don't buy into what he said. You know why he said that? Because I have Freiermuth. I have Freiermuth in Dynasty. He has Darnell Washington in Dynasty. That's why he knows exactly who that guy is.
I forgot he was even on my team. He must be stashed somewhere on the bench deep where no one looks. But yeah, I agree. I think Freiermuth could be in for a big year. I mean, they got the quarterbacks. The play caller is going to target the tight ends. I mean, look at Jonnu Smith broke out last year. Like, imagine what Freiermuth could do. Look, guys, I told myself I wasn't going to do this. I want to pick Kyle Pitts at the tight end one. I want to do it. I do, because this is the time where we're like, you know what? Nah, we ain't falling for it again. And then he shows us and reminds us who he really is. But I'm not going to do it because I don't want to end up on this list 2 years in a row having to, admit my mistakes.
But I love him
this
year.
I do too. But I want to go with the guy that, hey, look, everything's set up for him to be the tight end one. This Dalton Kincaid. And we saw him do this last year. Started off slow, but really hit his stride down the stretch with Josh Allen. You guys talked about it. There's no Stephon Diggs. We don't know where this offense is going to go. Like, this legit is Josh Allen's wide receiver one. Don says he's the best quarterback. You already said he's been the number one quarterback the last 3 or 4 years. I want the guy that his number one target. So I think it's Kincaid. Like, imagine if Dalton Kincaid gets 140 to 150 targets from Josh Allen. And I'm pretty sure the Bills defense ain't what it used to be too. So they're going to be in some shootouts as well, especially in the AFC East. So you're telling me I get the wide receiver one at the tight end position for the best quarterback? I mean, I'm sold. So I'm going with Dalton Kincaid. And for breakout, let me think off the top of my head, because my breakout was Kyle Pitts, but I feel like that's too easy. Let me see. Who should I pick? You know what, man? I'm gonna I'm gonna stick it to Don. I'm going with Darnell Washington, man. Just because Arthur Smith is on the Steelers. Like, let's legit think about this. Let's not act like Washington was this terrible prospect coming out of college either. Like, he's a freak of nature. Like, we seen him at Georgia, and the only reason he didn't break out at Georgia is because of who? Brock Bowers. So now he's with a coach that will actually use him, and he's got some good quarterbacks. I'm not saying he's going to be, tight end 5, but like, is it out of the realm of possibility that he's not like tight end 12 to 15? I mean, that's a crazy leap. So I'm going to pick him as the breakout.
The only thing I would say is in the history, I've watched a lot more Steeler games than you have, JT.
You ain't watched Arthur Smith games as a Steeler fan.
We've always had this idea of 2 tight ends and this and that. And it's like the Steelers are going to ground and pound the ball. And when you've got Pickens, you have other guys, offensive weapons. We're going to throw screens to Jaylen Warren. Like, there's only so many passes that can go to the tight end. So, you can put your head down and show the ugly Bengals hat. But at the end of the day, you're a Dolphins fan wearing a Bengals hat. But I just don't know if there's enough targets for both.
Because I love how irritated this hat makes you. Like, I've had this hat for a decade, and every time I show this hat, you get anger and anger. This is like one of the easiest things on the planet. Why would I not do it?
So, Frank, let's go to defenses real quick. Top defense and then the breakout defense that'll come out of nowhere.
Top defense, I'm going to go with the Jets. Last year, even with atrocious quarterback play, like we mentioned, some of the worst you'll ever see, they still finished, I believe, top 5 in fantasy points per game. Now, with good quarterback play, what does that do? That puts the defense in better situations. They're not hung out to dry with short field position, constant punts where their offense can't move the ball, and then they're tired, and then that's how the other team scores on them. Now they're going to be playing more with leads. What does that mean? More opportunities to rack up sacks and turnovers. And this Jets defense is just completely stacked. I'd be looking to try to get them in fantasy. Not to say you're going to reach on a defense too much, but I think they're going to finish top scoring fantasy defense. Now, breakout one, I'm going to go with the Bears because once they traded for Montez Sweat, they really started to find their groove. They were playing much better in the second half. And now with, Justin Fields was good in fantasy, but like their offense wasn't as well-rounded, of course, as it is now, adding Keenan Allen, Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze. So that's going to help out the defense. I think the Bears could make the playoffs this year. They'll be a winning team. So you want to have a defense on winning teams because if they're playing with the lead more, and like I said, that's more favorable for fantasy points because if you're playing with the lead, the opposing team needs to pass more, and that obviously has more opportunities for sacks and interception. So give me the Bears as the breakout.
I like it. I like those picks. JT, we'll have you follow up. Won't be as good, but go ahead. Try to.
Yeah, it's hard to follow that. I'm gonna go a different direction. I think the defense that's going to be number 1 is going to be the Eagles, and I think just change of scenery, having new coordinators that the team feels confident in, and I think they actually draw up good schemes for them to go out there and play defense. So the Eagles always have talent on defense. They basically have all the Georgia National Championship players just getting better in the NFL. And you said it's about playing with the lead. I think the Eagles obviously going to be one of the best offenses in the league. So they're going to be up a lot. And that division, you get to play Daniel Jones twice and a rookie quarterback twice. Like, you only got to worry about Dak and CD. And I think, those games could go either way. So I'm going with the Eagles as my number 1 defense. And then the breakout, I want to say the Seahawks, just because their coach just led the Baltimore Ravens to like an epic comeback of, playing defense. They won the Triple Crown. So I'm excited to see like what he does out there in Seattle with the defense. I know the offense is taken care of, but usually those defensive coaches, like, they leave their mark on the team. So that's my breakout.
Frank, I agree with you. I think it's the Jets. They were actually number 4 last year in fantasy, and just being on the field less. They're going to be on the field less, probably playing with the lead, which means they'll be able to make plays, ball hawk, do whatever they need to do. So I think that is about as close as you can get to a shoe-in, because if they can do that at number 4, they've got to be better, especially if Reddick eventually shows up. And the breakout, I'm going to go.
He ain't coming to work.
I'm going to go way out on the ledge here for this one. They're going to play in a tough offensive division, but I'm just going to spice it up. I'm going to go Green Bay. They signed Xavier McKinney, big free agent splash, 4 years, $67 million at cornerback. They've got good pieces in the secondary, and they've got a new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. And one of the things is he wants more big plays. And when you talk fantasy, you don't always need to be this Baltimore defense that shuts teams down, a Jets defense that shuts teams down. We've seen it before with the Chiefs before, where they're just a turnover machine. They might give up 400 yards, but they're a turnover machine. They get a touchdown every 4 games, and all of a sudden you look up and they're a top 10 defense, and you're like, how? And I think that's the way Green Bay can play. Even their offense has said this defense looks completely different compared to what we've faced in the past. And I think he's going to emphasize that big play mentality. And a lot of times that can be contagious. All of a sudden, a strip sack here, a forced fumble here, a pick 6 here, and all of a sudden you've got a top 10 defense, and you're like, this defense really isn't that good, but because they make the turnover. So going to go out on a ledge there. They could end up being the bottom of the barrel again, especially in that division with the Bears upgraded Detroit and Minnesota with their weapons with Justin Jefferson. So a little risky, but I'll swing for the fences there with Green Bay.
I like it.
That's kind of disappointing. You guys picking 2 defenses that are in the division we're counting on for offense.
Yeah,
I don't like
risky.
That.
It's risky.
But I mean, you guys are 2 geniuses. So if that works out, that means we should not be drafting any players in that division.
I will say this for Green Bay: they're going to face probably 2 rookies, right? J.J. McCarthy and Caleb Williams. Now we expect both of them to be good, but it doesn't mean they're not going to have their rookie lapses.
Rookies are rookies,
so, right?
Speaking of rookies, this one should be fast. All right, best rookie.
Yeah, despite all the training camp buzz that Malik Neighbors is getting, and I love I like him in fantasy, I got to just go with Marvin Harrison Jr. There's a reason why he was, so hyped. Like you've been waiting for him in Dynasty these last couple of years. He's a complete stud. Great situation with, wide open wide receiver rooms. Like I said, the Cardinals defense is really bad, likely going to play in a lot of shootouts. There's a reason why Marvin Harrison Jr. is the highest drafted rookie receiver we've ever seen. He's going like almost in the first round. When Jamar Chase came out, he was like in the 5th round. When Jefferson came out, well, he wasn't even the top receiver in his draft, so he was later. Even in like back in the day, Calvin Johnson, no, he never went this high. So this is the highest rookie receiver we've ever seen in fantasy drafts, and it's for a reason. Marvin Harrison's an easy pick.
All right. JT, pound for pound, I'm a big boxing guy, so pound for pound.
He about to do something ridiculous. Go ahead. Just get to it.
All else equal, I think it's Brock Bowers. They're going to go 2 tight end sets. They've got a great quarterback in Gardner Minshew, as both of you have mentioned earlier.
Yeah, they got Trevor Lawrence, so they should be all right.
Pittman was fortunate to have last year. So that with their 2 tight end sets, he's not going to come off the field, and they're making him block, which means he's going to be able to stay out there even on play action passes. I think the red zone will pump up his numbers. You're going to trust Zamir White at the goal line? I don't know. That's not a knock against Zamir White. It's just he hasn't done it.
Sounds like it.
And they're going to focus on Devontae Adams. You can't double both, and they're going to leave the rookie Brock Bowers open. And the other thing is, believe it or not, the Raiders have talent. They have a good team. Antonio Pierce, heck of a coach. And so I think they're going to find a way. And listen, we've heard preseason camp and training camp things about players before, like, oh, Brock Bowers, they're going to use Michael Mayer a lot, and Brock Bowers this and that.
Nobody talking about Michael Mayer. So, why are you bringing him up?
There definitely is. They talked about 2 tight end sets. That's what everyone's worried about. But we heard this about Jamar Chase when he had the drops in training camp his rookie year. Plus, he didn't have a healthy Joe Burrow who was coming off of ACL. And it's like, forget all that. Look at the talent, pound for pound. It's Brock Bowers because he plays a position that is still so unique, and he plays it in a different way. And with a quarterback where they're not going to try to maybe open it up, Brock Bowers is going to get a lot of those target looks underneath. And then he's going to do his thing like Gronk, run over a couple guys, drag a couple guys, and forget about it. He's going to end up with 9 catches on the day for 80 yards and a touchdown.
Is he going to cook the team meal and drive the plane too? Jesus.
Maybe they took him in the first round.
Mistake. They should have taken somebody else. Even though I think Bowers is going to be a good player, but You talking all this stuff about pound for pound. Pound for pound, give me 140 plus targets from Kyler Murray rather than 60 from Gardner Minshew. It's Marvin Harrison. It's easy. You made that way too difficult.
All right, Frank. So this is just for you because JT, as you can tell, Frank, JT doesn't really know too much. So, who are 2 players that you'll regret not drafting?
Okay, so I picked 2 players who people may avoid due to, uncertainty in their situation. So we're going to start with Jaden Reed of the Packers. People are always thinking it's a crowded receiving room. They have so much talent there. Let me just take the cheapest one. But hey, the fact is Jaden Reed came out of the draft as a touted prospect. A lot of people liked him. He was hyped in dynasty drafts coming into last year. I remember that. And, he delivered as a rookie. He finished top 25 in points per game. And the coaching staff has talked about how they want to, manufacture touches from he can make plays on the ground. He scored 10 total touchdowns. The concern is that, when Christian Watson was healthy, the Packers would kind of sometimes take Jaden Reed off in 2 receiver sets. And they do like Romeo Doubs. And there is Dontavian Wicks. But I think this is a case where Jaden Reed is the most talented receiver on the team. They're going to find ways to get him the ball, and he's tied to a great young quarterback in Jordan Love and an offense that should score a lot of points. So I think we're overthinking it a little bit. Often we see rookies who perform well in their first season get enhanced roles in year 2, and that's the case with Jaden Reed. And hey, it's not like Christian Watson is the picture of good health. He always seems to be dealing with something. So there could be opportunities for more looks. So I think you will regret, just going with the cheapest Packers receiver. I think paying up for Jaden Reed is the play. Now, the second one that you could regret not drafting is in a backfield with looks like it could be a committee. But hey, if you look at it this way, it's a really good offense, and you're betting on a young player in year 2 over a journeyman who has a limited track record in his 5th or 6th season. And that's the Bengals, and I'm talking about Chase Brown. Originally, coming into the offseason, I liked Zach Moss a little more because, he looked good with the Colts. There was a good stat that Zach Moss performs well running out of shotgun, and the Bengals run out of shotgun at a high rate. But then I thought to myself, why wouldn't I just bet on the year 2 player who's got really good speed, who's getting a lot of hype in camp, and that's Chase Brown, over the journeyman running? How many times do we see these journeyman running backs come into wide open situations and then they don't really do much? Look at, Mike Davis when he went to the Falcons.
Mike Davis.
Zach Moss could be good, but I think if Zach Moss, if it works out for him, he's just a solid, RB2 here and there. You start him and he leads the committee. I don't think there's a situation where he's just the total bell cow. But with Chase Brown, you have that mystery box of upside. He's got elite speed. I think there's more of a ceiling there. So taking Chase Brown later in your draft, maybe as your RB3, and he can make a major impact late in the season as his role continues to grow. Hey, it's a really good Bengals offense, wide open opportunity. So I like Chase Brown.
I like it. All right.
I like that. So let's go the opposite end of the spectrum. Frank, these questions are also only going to be for you because Don does think he knows everything. We don't want to hear him talk. So give us 3 players that you are avoiding and you are out on in this draft.
All right. Don's not going to like this because I'm talking about 2 players he mentioned earlier. The first one that I'm going to be avoiding is Travis Kelce. Now, Don's right. In if you look at Mahomes' touchdown rate, last year was by far a career low. And the Chiefs are still pass heavy. And of course, their receiving options are much better this year with, Rashee Rice in year 2, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. So that could mean more touchdowns for Kelce. But my thing is that Kelce's getting older. This team just won back-to-back Super Bowls. They really have no incentive to really, push him during the season. They could kind of manage him. They don't need to lean on him anymore with this upgraded receiving core. This team is just playing for the playoffs, really. And, their division isn't really much. They should easily win it. So that just makes me a little concerned, and it's why I like to go with Trey McBride, who goes later. So because I like McBride more than Kelce and McBride goes later, it just ends up that I never get end up getting Kelsey because someone else takes him earlier. So that's why I'm a little lower on him, and I'm avoiding Travis Kelsey. Number 2, Derrick Henry. I know he's on the Ravens. He's with Lamar Jackson. And that's going to help Derrick Henry's efficiency on the ground. Like Henry, you're starting to see the decline in efficiency. Last year, 4.2 yards per carry, which I believe is I believe it's a career low. Now, Lamar will help that, but Lamar will also take away some yards on the ground, maybe a couple touchdowns, although, Henry could do what Gus Edwards did. Gus Edwards rushed for 13 touchdowns. He was still only RB 29, and that's because Lamar Jackson doesn't target running back. So Henry never really made an impact in the passing game, but it's going to go down to virtually nothing this year. And like the Chiefs, the Ravens have Super Bowl aspirations. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. They don't really have an incentive to completely lean on their 30-year-old running back. It makes more sense for them to manage his touches so he's fresh for when it really matters, and that's playoff football when it gets cold. Also, the Ravens have spoken about, Justice Hill is going to play a role in the offense. Not to say he's going to take so much away, but 2-minute drill, 3rd and long, passing downs, you're going to see some Justice Hill. And then Keaton Mitchell, who looked good as a rookie, he tore his ACL late in the season, but that doesn't mean he's going to be out all year this year. At some point, he's going to come back, and that adds another element to the running game. I add that all up. Derrick Henry's going 2nd round, early 3rd. I would just rather take Jalen Waddle, take a shot Devon Achane, take ETN is undervalued a bit, but I often find myself taking a receiver where Henry goes because I end up trying to get Bijan or Breece Hall or even Jahmyr Gibbs, and I end up taking Drake London, Nico Collins. So I'm always ending up avoiding Derrick Henry. And the last one, another one of Don's boys, James Cook. So James Cook did great, especially when Joe Brady started calling plays. But the thing is, Josh Allen takes away rushing touchdowns. And we didn't mention they drafted a running back in the 4th round, Ray Davis. And apparently I listened to a podcast established to run. Evan Silva is a great contributor in fantasy football. He said that the offensive coordinator on the Bills, Joe Brady, really loved Ray Davis and was pounding the table for them to draft Ray Davis. So you could see Davis play a role and even take away touchdown or red zone looks from Cook in that sense. So then you have 2 potential, vultures, so to speak, for James Cook's touchdown outlook, and that has me a little lower on him and steering clear.
Hey, Frank. So I want to push back on 2 things. One, and I'll do it real quick.
You want to push back on everything.
I did. But with Derrick Henry, you mentioned the playoffs is the most important. They'll manage them. You can't do that in the AFC North. You can't do that. It is a good division. You can't do that in the AFC either. The Chiefs can get away with it because they got 6 games that they should win. At worst, go 5-1. You can't do that. Baltimore is going to face the division champs from each of the other divisions too this year. So you can't just manage them. You've got to run them as a bell cow, because if you don't, you're either going to get Lamar hurt or you're not going to be as good as you were last year. And that might mean the Bengals are better. I think the Steelers are going to be better, and Cleveland's going to be better. So for you to get better, you've got to do something different, and that's run Derrick Henry. But I definitely understand I see your point. And then with Cook, I would say that, yes, maybe Joe Brady pounds the table for him, but once you get into camp, and I heard he fumbled the ball the other day, when that happens and then your job's on the line with a rookie, guess who you're giving it to the goal line? Josh Allen, James Cook. But I understand your point with the goal line, even if it's not Ray Davis, it's Josh Allen, similar to what we were talking about in Philly with Saquon and possibly Hurts. So I do get that.
Frank, you must be right because he's bringing up random camp stats from teams he don't even care about. Now he knows this guy fumbled. But I will say I agree on your players. Derrick Henry, because I had him last year in fantasy, so I had to watch those games he played, and it was ugly to watch him run at times. But I don't know if it was him or is it because he was on the Titans. We'll find out this year. But I do agree with you with James Cook just because he's never had to be a workhorse at any point in his career, whether it's high school, college. He's never been that guy to say, hey, give him 30 touches. It's not like he's Christian McCaffrey at Stanford, where he was the offense, and then McCaffrey came into the league, and he is the offense despite him being a smaller back. Like, you got to show you can handle a workload before they're going to give it to you. I just don't think James Cook is that guy. I think he's really like a number 2, third down back guy, and they just don't have anybody. Maybe this Ray Davis guy could be, like a Gus Edwards, and it just messes up his value. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I want to add one quick thing quickly. I also like just the way I like to draft, especially this year, because like I said, I love those first round running backs. And if I'm taking the running back in the first round, I like getting a couple receivers, maybe round 2, round 4, or round 2, round 3. I like locking in one of the top tier, quarterbacks, maybe get a Hurts, a Lamar, an Allen, a Mahomes, even a Stroud maybe. And I like getting one of the tight ends, like a McBride, a Kincaid, even a Pitts. So what happens is when I'm trying to do that, I never get Cook because Cook goes when those quarterbacks or tight ends go in drafts. So that's just an added point why I end up avoiding Cook, aside from the player himself. It's just the way I like to build the roster. Because I like Javonte Williams later to target as maybe my RB2. And then I mentioned Chase Brown. He could be another, like the RB3. I'm just getting a bunch of dart throws to find a solidified RB2 rather than, take a James Cook where he goes where the quarterbacks that I like.
Got it. And then you miss out.
Oh, trust me, Don knows all about not having an RB2. So he understands exactly what you're saying.
So this is our quote unquote buyer beware question, meaning, not going to be a bust, but a fade at the ADPs going at, meaning he's just going too high right now.
All right, every time I talk about this one, I get just ripped on Twitter, and it's because of course he's a stud and everyone loves him, but it's Justin Jefferson, and it's just because you look at all those first rounders, every single one of them is on a really good offense, like McCaffrey, the Niners, Lamb, the Cowboys, Chase, the Bengals, Hill, the Dolphins, Bijan, the Falcons, Brees, the Jets, Garrett Wilson, the Jets, Amon-Ra, the Lions. Jefferson's on the Vikings with Sam Darnold. I think we have to, he's an absolute stud, going to go down as one of the best receivers of all time, but I don't think he's infallible. Like if Darnold plays like Darnold does, that's going to affect Justin Jefferson. I know Kevin O'Connell's a great coach. He could help out Darnold, but it's Sam Darnold. And let's say Darnold gets benched. The Vikings have a really tough first 5 games. They could start 1-4, 0-5. And then they have a bye. Then they play the Lions at home. Okay, McCarthy comes in. I like McCarthy. But the fact is, if a team's willing to start the year, basically it's been set that Darnold is starting, it feels like, for a while, right? So clearly they think McCarthy needs some seasoning, needs some development off the bench. So if McCarthy starts, you got to think maybe they run a little more. It's not as much passing volume. So there's all these risks with Justin Jefferson to have a little bit less volume. I know he's amazing, but I just feel like there's more concerns compared to some of the other receivers or running backs in the first round. Like I said, they're all in very good offenses, and the Vikings, let's face it, they could be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year.
Ooh, all right. Put that on
a clip. We weren't going to draft him anyway.
Listen, put that on a clip, JT. That's going to break the internet there. But that you make very valid points, Frank. That is well done, well said there.
All right. All I can think about is when OBJ went to the Browns, and I'm like, is this what Justin Jefferson is heading for? That's what you have me thinking. I'm scared now.
Yeah, like even look at Devontae Adams. People could say, TJ Hawkinson coming off the torn ACL, Jordan Addison might get suspended, so Jefferson could get so many targets. Devontae Adams had like 80 targets last year, and it was bad quarterback, like it was mid, as the kids say, or like below average quarterback play. Where did Adams finish? Like receiver 15 or something in points per game. So there could be a little more volatility, inconsistency with Jefferson. Now, a common pushback is people are like, oh, but Jefferson blew up with Nick Mullins. Yeah, but 2 of those games were against the Lions. Do you remember what the Lions were giving up to receivers late in the season? Puka Nacua in the playoffs just exploded on them. Mike Evans went off on. They just couldn't stop anyone in the passing game. So that's a little bit inflated, and it's 4 games. Like we're talking now a full season. You just can't really see. I don't see like Jefferson blowing up in this year's situation. So that's why I just think he's a fade. Not to say I'll totally avoid him. If he falls to like pick 12 okay, I'll take him. But sometimes he goes like as high as 5, and I'd rather have like Bijan, Brees Hall, Jamar Chase over him.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Sounds like Don won that Justin Jefferson trade after all. All right, so let's go through this one. Bounce back player. Frank, who do you got?
All right, so this pick, it's not someone you're going to pick in your usual 1 QB league. You're going to do it if you're in a super flex. You're going to do it if you're in best ball, or you're going to watch him on the waiver wire. Deshaun Watson, bounce back season. I know he's been awful with the Browns, but if you really look at it, he's played 12 games. It's not a full 2 seasons. The Browns want to play more of a spread offense. Why they bring in Jerry Jeudy. Look at the receiving core. It's really good. Amari Cooper. Judy's all like, he hasn't lived up to expectations, but he's a decent receiver. They still got Elijah Moore, who's a bit of a threat. David Njoku really blew up. Nick Chubb coming off the injury, they'll probably slow play him. So this is a team that plays at a really fast pace, the Browns, and they want to pass more. And you look at Watson, as much as he struggled, he's still running. Like you look at his, I don't have the number in front of me, but he's still running at a reasonable rate, and he was still, as bad as he was playing in real life, if you look at his full starts, he was playing at like a QB 15 kind of pace. So given the supporting cast and the fast pace, it's a make or break year pretty much for him. If he plays like this again, like you got to think they're looking elsewhere at quarterback. It's got a good offensive line. I think Deshaun Watson bounces back. Maybe not to like his previous Texans form, but to a point where he's startable in fantasy as maybe a top 10 option some weeks.
Man, I hope you're not right, Frank. As a Steeler fan, I hope you're not right. And I always want to see the Browns totally fail. I'm going to go with a former Steeler. I think it's Deontay Johnson. I mean, JT has this basketball reference, Frank, where even on a bad team, someone got to score 20 points in basketball. Someone got to average 22 on a bad team, right? And I think Deontay Johnson is that receiver that someone's got to get the targets. Someone has to produce some yards. Like, even if it's on a Devontae Adams scale, that's a hell of a comeback year for Deontay Johnson. I mean, Leggett is now hurt, so you don't know what's going to happen there. Like, nowadays, I am so worried about any time a guy pops up in injuries in the preseason. Just think about Burrow. What was it last year? He got hurt the second day with the calf, goes off on a cart. He doesn't come back until a couple, like, I'm just so worried about any injury at all. And then especially a rookie, because rookies usually want to be out there all the time. So anytime they're sitting this rookie, they're worried. And then the other thing is Jonathan Brooks. He's out the first 4 games. So, yes, is Chuba Hubbard like a formidable NFL running back? Sure, but no one's going to say he's like an RB1. And then on top of that, I think it's a fresh start for Deontay Johnson because let's face it, as Steeler fans, I think they were a little harsh on Deontay Johnson, some of his antics, which sometimes he deserved it, and I think other times he was truly being honest. And then the other thing is, JT knows this, I'm a big Dave Canales fan, and I think he's going to figure it out, play to the strengths of Deontay Johnson, play to the strengths of Bryce Young, and Deontay Johnson, unless it's Jonathan Mingo, it's going to be Deontay Johnson's the focal feature of this offense.
Love that. Love it.
Like, I got Jonathan.
No, Frank, we don't love it.
I got Jonathan.
He basically just going to say all the breakouts.
In my dynasty.
All the breakouts are his dynasty team players.
But listen, Frank, I'm not fake. Right, I could come on here and I have Deontay and I have Mingo and I could tell the fans and listeners, like, listen, go with this other guy. No, I'm telling you, this is what I go with because this is what I feel, and I'm going to back it up by whatever I say I end up doing. And I think Deontay Johnson, I've avoided trade offers for him, and I went out and got him the year before after he had a bad season with the Steelers 2 years ago, and it's like I just think – who else he's got to be the focal point there. Yeah. If not, Bryce Young's never going to get any better.
Agreed.
I never thought we'd talk about a Mingo breakout live.
No, but one thing I will say, I definitely prefer to get Deontay in full PPR because, of course, even though I think, like you said, Dave Canales is going to help the offense a lot, the touchdowns may not be as much there for Deontay, but I like him a lot and definitely want to look at him in full PPR, even half PPR, but not as priority is
Right,
in full,
right.
because like he could just get filled with
Yeah.
those underneath targets.
Yeah. No, that
I
is
like those
complete. That is
answers.
completely fair. Yeah.
Actually, I like your answer. I don't like Deontay Johnson, but my bounce back player is he's truly going to be a bounce back player because if you think about it, he's been hurt really the past 2 years, and team's been rushing him back, and then he always gets hurt. We've seen him be elite. It's Cooper Cup. Like if he is healthy, he's gonna go right back to the same situation. He's gonna play with Stafford in a McVay offense, which we have already seen as a cheat code. And now add on the fact that Puka Nacua is hurt. I'm hearing week to week in MCL. I don't like that.
Nope.
that's
Nope.
that's code word for it's gonna bleed into week one. So if Cooper Cup is healthy, like he gonna go right back to what we've seen before, especially if Puka's not playing. He gonna get all the Matt Stafford targets that we've seen him dominate with. Like, imagine if you have a healthy Cooper Cup in your flex and you already got your team set. Like, I'm taking that all day. So,
Yeah, and he's getting a lot of glowing reports in camp too, Cooper Cup.
Yep. Well, JT, yep. And Frank, I was going to say, I was listening. I think it was the NFL Network on Sirius XM or the Fantasy Sports Radio on Sirius XM. And Sirius XM, if you want to bring the three of us on anytime, please feel free to go ahead. We'll open up our schedule, our busy schedule for you. But two things about Cooper Cup they were saying in camp was, one, he was never healthy last year.
Yeah.
Like, even though he was out there playing, he was never healthy from the jump, from training camp. Now he is. And then, two, the other thing is, even though they got Puka Nacua, all the reports are, McVay's offense runs through Cooper Cup still. And those are the two combos, a healthy Cooper Cup and McVay believing that the offense has to go through him and not Puka Nacua yet. Like, wait for your time. That means buy in on Cooper Cup. So I like that. JT.
That's all I need to hear. Cooper Cup, wide receiver 1.
All right. So kind of the opposite now, Frank. Who is that player that we need to let go and realize it's not going to happen for him, whether he's not coming back or all those expectations we ever had for him, they're out the window. Like, let it go.
So this is a player, he had a terrible rookie season. I had a glimmer of hope that maybe it was just because, he was misused as a rookie. But then we see in training camp, like, he's not really making waves with a really wide open room. And that's Chargers receiver Quentin Johnston. Like, look at that receiving room. You got rookie Ladd McConkey, you got Joshua Palmer, you got DJ Chark, and reports are Quentin Johnston's like 4th on the depth chart. I think, he's not being drafted in your traditional type of league, but if it's a deeper league or if it's best ball or something like that, or super flex, like, why even try a dart throw on Quentin Johnston? Just look for, let me think, Rashad Bateman, because I think, at least Bateman, he's shown flashes. I know he's really disappointed us every year, but he's dealt with injuries and he's getting positive reports in camp, whereas Quentin Johnston's getting negative reports. So that's what differentiates the two struggling former first rounders, or like two first rounders who haven't really done much in the NFL yet. So, I mean, maybe a couple, we've seen it rarely where, the former first rounder can become, a rotational player, but I think we can give it up with Quentin Johnston to become, one of the top targets in a wide open room for the Chargers. It's going to be Palmer, it's going to be McConkey, and it's going to be downfield shots to DJ Chark. That's what it feels like.
Man, Frank, I don't like you saying that because I have him in Dynasty, but I actually agree with you. So
that means you're gonna give him away for free. I'll take him. Go ahead.
JT, who you got?
Yeah, I feel like QJ is like the easy one, but I'm gonna go with a guy that I've been waiting on for, it feels like forever, but it's only been 2 years, and every time I feel like, all right, this is the opportunity, boom, he goes and gets hurt and something happens, and it's Treylon Burks, man. Like, I'm done waiting. Like, he's had all the opportunity in the world. He ain't getting any younger. He's not getting any healthier, and the talent is all there. Like, he dominated in the SEC. I just don't see how he can return value. And he's a guy, like, if you're thinking about best ball, like sneaky dynasty pickups, like, he's a guy that you're like, hey, I might, do a dart throw on. But, like, this is do or die. Like, D-Hop's hurt for, 4 to 6 weeks. They ain't got nobody else except for Calvin Ridley. Like, if Treylon Burks can't do it now, it's never going to happen. And I don't have confidence that he can do it.
Hey, I'll trade you QJ for him. Straight up. Let's go.
All right. I had to deal with both of those guys, so I don't want to
I'll
keep
take.
that,
I'll take. Hey, at least you got
switching
Herbert.
mistakes back and forth.
At least you got
I'm
Herbert
moving in a new
instead of
positive
Levis.
direction.
You got Herbert. Okay, then send him over for free.
I didn't like how you got. I like how you didn't mention Josh Palmer though, because that sneaky could be the wide receiver one for the Chargers. He's already flashed, but I'm on the Josh Palmer train this year.
Yeah, it could be a good pick.
So I had QJ, but I actually had two other guys I was really debating between. And
Cook, go ahead, let it go.
No, and I'm gonna go, and I hate saying this, and I know Steeler Nation isn't gonna be happy. I think it's George Pickens. Like, I know that might be giving up on him early. I think it's Pickens. Like, I'm done with all these acrobatic, one-handed, behind my back, eyes closed, helmet turned backward catches in training camp. Like make a play, make a football play in a game. Like, and I'm not sure that with the QB situation, I'm not sure it's going to get any better for him. And we don't have, like, I think we actually have a lot of weapons, but I don't think we have that electric weapon, right? Like Roman Wilson, very good. The running backs are very good. Freiermuth is very good. Pickens is supposed to. Pickens, yes, he's supposed to be that guy. And when you look at fantasy, now we're talking fantasy. Real life is kind of the way he is in fantasy. Like, he ranks 30th. So you think this guy should be a wide receiver one on the Steelers? And it's like, to be honest, if Deontay Johnson didn't have all those other antics, Deontay Johnson's the better receiver, like all-around receiver. And it's like, when is Pickens? And this is my concern. Is he going to end up being like Antonio Brown and Chase Claypool, that maturity catches up to his production? And when the maturity level doesn't match the production anymore, like, what's going to happen as a Steeler? Because Steelers don't put up with that. And that's my only concern, is how does he behave? And that's a result of fantasy too.
Man, you know what? This is why I can't deal with you. I've been saying this for like the last 2 years, and y'all have flamed me in the group chat. Oh, he's saying Pickens ain't a wide receiver one. He's not a franchise player. What do you know? Now you agree with me?
Hey, Frank, did he say if that was in a group text or on the show? See, he doesn't. Whether it's in group text or not, I don't know. But he doesn't have.
You don't know now. He
doesn't have enough guts.
You can either confirm nor deny. This is the shit I got to deal with.
Go next question.
I was actually worried about it because I thought you would pick him for the breakout, but you didn't. So now it makes sense.
We got to finish the show. Let's go, JT. Hurry up.
All right. So next one. So who is? I say this. It's hard to say goodbye, but who is the one player that was once elite that we'll say goodbye to for good in fantasy this year?
It's so hard to say goodbye to this player who was just such an elite fantasy running back. Remember that 6-touchdown game? What was it, in the fantasy finals against the Vikings?
A lot of money.
It's time to say goodbye to Alvin Kamara. Declining rushing efficiency. The Saints are graded as having one of the very worst offensive lines in the NFL this year. Their head coach isn't good, Dennis Allen. I know they got an upgraded offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, but it just looks like Kamara is really declining. And one thing people are starting to say is, like, Sean Payton's offense is really, really prioritize checking down to running backs. And we saw that with the Broncos last year. Like, it's not like we thought of Javonte Williams as this big receiving back, but last year he was, and so was Jaleel McLaughlin and everyone there, and Samaje Perine. And you look at the Saints offensive coordinators throughout, or the Saints play callers throughout Kamara's career. It was Sean Payton and it was Pete Carmichael. It was basically running the same thing that Payton is, like his right-hand man. Now Carmichael is gone. He's now with the Broncos with Payton. Now they have Kubiak. What if that means maybe in his offense, he doesn't want to get as many targets to the running back? I know that's Kamara's skill, but Kamara clearly has lost some burst. The only really opposing argument for me here is that, Kendre Miller's been hurt and hasn't shown much, and Jamal Williams isn't great either. But I think here we have, even though Kamara will still get usage, I think the Saints have a chance to be really bad. And I think his years are, he's past his prime. I think what we could see out of Kamara this year is what we saw out of Austin Eckler last season, where you start to see the decline and he's just not getting it done for you in fantasy. But at least if that does happen, Kamara goes like 6th round, whereas Eckler went 1st round. But to sum it up, we got a declining player. He's aging. He's in what could be a bad offense, bad offensive line. I'm out on Alvin Kamara.
All right. I'm going to go with D-Hop. He's 32. He's already sidelined. What'd you say, JT? 4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks.
Due to a knee injury. And listen, we forget how good he was in Houston with Deshaun Watson because, he didn't have the greatest time in Arizona. And now he comes over here already hurt, dealing with Will Levis. And listen, no disrespect to Will Levis. I think he's better than what I thought at the NFL level. But D-Hop hurt and needing to go through – Levis is going to go through struggles. And going through struggles of a young quarterback, I just don't think D-Hop ever gets back to fantasy relevancy kind of the way Julio was those last 3-4 years where it was like, how much more can we get out of Julio? It's the same with D-Hop. You're thinking, hey, only 32, he can do it. Nah, you'll make catches, but it's never going to be like it once was, 100-yard game, 2 touchdowns, mossing guys. Nah, that's not happening anymore for D-Hop. Sorry.
I agree with you, man. I had D-Hop too, and he's essentially got the same injury that Treylon Burks had last offseason, this exact same time period. And I saw how that season went for Burks. He just wasn't right for the first 4 to 5 games. And I think the thing that no disrespect to D-Hop, he's an amazing all-time talent. He's been balling in the league, but I think the one thing that's overlooked is he's always been able to rely on just sheer volume everywhere he's gone. Everywhere he's gone, it's been him and nobody else. And now he, like you said, he's older, he's not healthy, and there's more target competition in Tennessee than people want to admit. There's 6 guys that could, command targets. There's 3 or 4 receivers, there's 2 running backs that catch the pass really well. So now you got this older guy, and can he earn targets at an efficient rate when all those other guys are out there earning targets too? So that's why I think his days of being an elite fantasy receiver are over. And I think this is the last year. He's never going to go back.
Wow. JT and I agree on something for once.
Sometimes great minds and mid minds meet in the middle somewhere. So, that happens, man.
Wow. It looked like you pointed to yourself when you said mid minds. I
don't
don't even know what that means, to be honest. But Frank.
Tells me everything I need to know who's the mid mind in this conversation.
Frank, this is why we bring you on the show. For this question coming up. All the other stuff was great, and that's why you're the expert. But this is why we bring you on for the show, for this question. So, to the fans and listeners out there, if you end up having the number 1 overall pick in the draft, Frank's going to tell you who to pick. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, the last 2 years I came on this show, I was always bold. I went Justin Jefferson. That was a big hit. I went Jamar Chase last year. That was a big miss. This year, I'm doing the opposite and not being bold at all. It's my pick for 1st overall is Christian McCaffrey. It just, what can you say? He won leagues last year, just does what he does. He's in the perfect situation for a running back in that he has a pocket passer. Well, not pocket passer. Purdy runs a little bit, but we could consider him pocket passer. So that helps with McCaffrey's, receiving upside. You have the most running back friendly scheme you can ask for with Kyle Shanahan. And you got just so many weapons on the team. McCaffrey just breaks fantasy. And I know he's injured right now. I don't think it's serious. I'm willing to still take the risk. So if I did have 1st overall, I would take Christian McCaffrey. But, some leagues you can kind of pick your preferences on your what order, and then it randomly selects. So I would prefer to pick in the 2 to 5 range, because I know in that range I'm highly likely to get either Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall, while getting an earlier 2nd rounder in the snake draft instead of McCaffrey, because I think Bijan or Breece can easily be the 1st overall pick. Both running backs can be a bell cow and catch a lot of passes. Both have quarterbacks coming off torn Achilles, which JT said could mean more checkdowns. And, they're both elite talents, explosive runners. They can absolutely do it. But I'm playing it safe with my 101 with Christian McCaffrey.
So, Frank, real quick, if you have the number 2 overall, McCaffrey off the board, it sounds like you're going Breece Hall or Bijan.
Yeah, so I'm taking Bijan, and the tiebreaker for me with Bijan over Breece is just that Bijan plays indoors, really, and he plays for a Falcons team whose offensive coordinator Zach Robinson comes from the Sean McVay tree, and we know how McVay loves to lean on one running back, and they like to play more fast pace. Basically, I just trust Zach Robinson, their offensive coordinator, more than the Jets' offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, which is like a tiebreaker. It doesn't mean I think Breece Hall is going to be held back by that. It just, they're really equal to me, and I have to look for something that puts me to one direction, and that's what it does for Bijan. So I would take him over, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. Even though Bijan and Breece go below them in a lot of drafts, I think the first 3 picks should be RB.
Ooh, all right.
Like it. All right, so I know Don's been waiting a whole year for this. So on this show, we don't duck smoke. We're always going to hold ourselves accountable. So we are going to go back and recap last year's show.
Ooh.
I'm going to give you guys some of the best and the worst from our predictions last year.
Oh.
So we had a lot of good stuff in here. So I'm not a big vegetable guy, so I like my dessert first. So I'm going to start with the hits. So Don, let's start with you. I think the best thing you said on last year's show was you were all over the Rashee Rice rookie breakout. And, obviously that was a gutsy call. He said he was the top receiver in the draft, and it worked out. And now he looks like he's Mahomes' wide receiver 1 for the next decade if he can slow down. So that was a good pick. I said to my avoid players were Jonathan Taylor and Christian Watson. Now, I didn't take my own advice because I drafted Jonathan Taylor, and it ended up costing me because he was out with that contract dispute. And like you said, Frank, Christian Watson did Christian Watson things and got hurt. But I think Frank had the 2 best ones. One, he said Jahmyr Gibbs was going to be the best rookie, and you really compared his usage to Christian McCaffrey. And I think that was spot on. And that's basically what we saw last year. Like McCaffrey flashes, and now he's a first-round running back in fantasy. So good call with, being ahead on the curve with Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, the other thing you did well was you also helped us out because your player to avoid last year was actually Cooper Kupp. And the same things you said on this show this year, making the case why he's a bounce back, were the same things you were warning us about last year. Him being hurt, you not buying that he's going to be healthy for the season and avoid. And then we knew last year Cooper Kupp ended up being a disaster. So those 2 calls, amazing by you. And they definitely helped a lot of people out. Now we got all the good stuff out of the way. Now let's go to this bad stuff. Don, let's start with you because some of this stuff I don't know what you were talking about. So your QB breakout last year, you were all over the Sam Howell train, and it was looking good for a few stops. That shit derailed, so he's no longer a starter. Other bad calls by you, Don. Your entire running back prediction was a disaster last year. So your RB1, I'm gonna give you a chance to remember. Do you remember who you picked as RB1 last year?
No, I'd have to go back and listen because I don't trust.
No, you don't need to go back and listen.
I said this stuff.
His RB1 was Austin Eckler, which I get it at the time, but it ended up being a disaster for people that took him in the first round. But your breakout pick was actually way worse than that. I would have taken the RB1 advice and live with myself rather than take your breakout advice. Your breakout running back last year, and I went back and listened, you had this whole theory. You had formulas worked out why this guy was going to break into the top 10, and they went out and they drafted Alexander Madison. That was rough.
Was a starting running back at least.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Mine was terrible. I just got people to believe that Kyle Pitts would be elite, and he ended up being shit again for the second straight year. So terrible by me, but they should be used to that by now because I'm always hyping up Pitts. Now we got to get to the king, Frank. 2 things that you said last year really stood out to me. One was you recommended your breakout QB would be Deshaun Watson. You even said you had him rated quarterback 9, and that did not turn out
well.
That
was a huge miss.
But you're running it back again, and I think I'm convinced this year again, I'm willing to get hurt again, so I might be back in on Deshaun. So you
Damn, I didn't even realize I did that 2 years in a row. Jesus.
hey, when you feel it, you feel it. But this one, we were not feeling. In particular, Don, because he couldn't wait to ask you about this. So Don, the worst call from him last year. I'll let you do the honors.
Well, I'm gonna say it was Jamar Chase at the 1-1. I mean,
huge miss.
You were buying so much stock on him that I think it devalued his value alone. But no, I mean, listen, Frank, that's okay because I think the 1-1 is very risky, as you said, going with CMC, but because of an injury to a Brock Purdy, or if Trent Williams doesn't report, that really can affect his value. I think the 1-1 is sometimes, unless it's Marshall Faulk in the 99 Rams, I think it's one of the hardest picks to make. So I give you a pass this year. You're 1-1. We hope to have you back next year. We hope you will come back next year.
Of course, my favorite show.
And so we'll see what CMC does, and then maybe you can go 2-1, and then you're off and running.
My biggest mistake with the Chase thing was that even though Burrow got hurt in preseason, I didn't budge because I just wanted to, I've been talking it the whole off season. I didn't want to budge off that. And that was a mistake because clearly Burrow's injury affected, Chase. And hey, maybe that could be a year early because now with Tyler Boyd out, they might use Chase more in the slot and get those, underneath targets. But hey, maybe I'm making the same mistake again, downplaying McCaffrey's injury, but we'll have to see.
Hopefully not. But I am worried about those Cavs nowadays. So
Frank, stand on business. I actually took your advice. I took Jamar Chase. I think I had 2 leagues where I had the 1-on-1. I took him. I made the playoffs and I made the championships in both of those leagues, and I won one. So it helped me out. Don was just, in my ear all year. Oh, it's not working out for me. So, hey, look, it probably wasn't Chase. It wasn't Chase. It was probably those other bad pitch you made, like Alexander Madison.
That's a different league. Well, Frank, thank you again for your time. We hope to have you back again next year. But before you go, let our fans and listeners know where they can find and follow you.
So you can follow me on X and TikTok and Instagram at FAMMIRANTETFJ. Posting a lot of content on X, but I'll try to post more on other platforms too. Rankings updated at thegameday.com. The weekly rankings, stay tuned in. Season finished 6th overall in the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Contest, so I could help you set your lineups that way. Feel free to DM me on X for lineup questions, draft questions. It's a great time. Fantasy football drafting, honestly, is the most fun part of the year, even though, of course, the season is great too. But, great time of year. And, guys, always a pleasure being on the show. Like I said, this is my favorite of the year. We do such a nice in-depth preview, and I would like to add on this year looking at our hits and misses. It was fun.
Yeah. Hey, we always hold ourselves accountables, even the experts. That's what makes them experts. And Frank, thanks again. We always love this show. We look forward to it all year, and that also means football is right around the corner. But great job. Thank you. And to the fans and listeners out there, remember to please subscribe to us, JT and the Don All Sports Podcast. We can be found on all of the major platforms. And remember, if you like what we do, leave us a 5-star review. And JT,
if you don't like what we do,
leave us a 5-star review. Remember to also subscribe to Give Us a Shot Network YouTube channel, where you can find us at JT and the Don, our handle, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. So, JT, Frank, great episode. And to both of you, and JT, till the next episode, see ya.
Peace.